The problem is that a lot of big companies, process becomes a substitute for thinking. You're encouraged to behave like a little gear in a complex machine. Frankly, it allows you to keep people who aren't that smart and who aren't that creative. Elon Musk. About them apples.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we all need to work together to overcome the demise of USAID. So I'm pleased to announce that 1% of all the proceeds from tonight's Super Chats will go to restoring the supply of transgender operas for disadvantaged Peruvians. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So glad you could join us this evening. And I understand there's some sort of big American gridiron football game going on this evening, but I'm just a simple English cricket fan, so I know precious little about such things. I'm just glad that you have all chosen to spend your Sunday evening on pursuits that are more edifying than watching the NFL refs make sure that the Chiefs come out victorious. But with these disclaimers out of the way, it's time for the thing you came here to see. So here is your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending 7 February 2025. Dateline Hollywood, Monday, 3 February. In a story that proves the old axiom, play woke games, win woke prizes, Netflix spent this week in full-on damage control mode as the news emerged that the star of their woke Oscar bait movie, Amelia Perez, a man in a dress who's currently pretending to be a woman named Carla Sofia Gascon, used to be, well, sort of a MAGA Republican type, you might say, back when he was still a dude who didn't wear a dress and also didn't have any compunction about posting his decidedly non-woke political opinions all over social media. But wait, I hear you say, are you telling me that Netflix, with all of their endless resources, they dumped hundreds of millions of dollars into making a musical about a transgender Mexican drug lord, then they dumped further tens of millions of dollars into buying Oscar nominations for Best Picture and Best Actress, and they never bothered doing a social media audit on the dude they bought the Best Actress nomination for? You're actually serious right now, Netflix? Because I feel like this whole scandal could have been fairly easily forestalled if you had assigned some entry-level flunky to spend, like, I don't know, one day doing a deep dive on this dude's social media before you go making him the centerpiece of your entire woke Oscar season campaign. And what are the horrible, dastardly things that Mr. Gascon stands accused of saying on his Twitter feed back before he was a lady? Well, I want you to brace yourself, because it's some pretty shocking stuff. He insulted Muslim terrorists. He mocked George Floyd, peace be upon him, for being a career criminal who expired from a drug overdose while in police custody. And worst of all, he said that DEI is stupid and pointless. In other words, 8 years ago, Carlos Gascon was a fairly normal man with a fairly reasonable set of political views. What happened between then and now that transformed him into a big, delicious chunk of transvestite Oscar bait? Well, who can say, really? I think the important thing is that we all sit back and enjoy the problem that Netflix has created for itself, because they build their entire award season campaign around this guy, and now they are desperate, really, really desperate to act like he doesn't exist. They are trying to cancel and unperson the guy they spent untold millions of dollars buying a Best Actress nomination for. So ultimately, we are left with one question. Is it gratifying to see people get rewarded with all the shame and embarrassment they so richly deserve? Why, yes. Yes, it is. Dateline Washington, Tuesday, 4 February. In a story that reminds us why we changed the name of the segment to the Golden Age of Western Civilization News Roundup, President Donald Trump confirmed earlier this week what a lot of us have been hoping, that when he nominated Linda McMahon for Secretary of Education, he gave her the remit to tear down the department and put herself out of a damn job. And if you actually care about the scholastic achievement of American school children, that news should come as music to your ears, because those fans who have been keeping score at home cannot help to have noticed that the federal education department has existed for around 45 years now, and not only has it created no demonstrable, quantifiable benefit to anyone except federal bureaucrats, the scholastic achievement level of American students actually accelerated in its decrease and kept accelerating ever since the damn department was first established. This was nothing but bureaucrats building a new monument to themselves. And you know who saw the thing for exactly what it was? A man named Ronald Reagan did. When Reagan campaigned for the presidency in 1980, getting rid of the education department was one of the main things he campaigned on. And a lot of people voted for him because they wanted to get rid of the damn thing too. Because even by 1980, when it had only existed for 1 year or less, it was perfectly obvious what the education department actually was. And it didn't have anything to do with making anybody more educated. Reagan was never able to get rid of it because he learned the same hard lesson that Trump learned during his first term. Central government graft and corruption is a bipartisan business. Just because a Republican president wants to drain the swamp, that doesn't mean the Republicans in Congress are automatically going to play ball. So Linda McMahon, even though your husband stands accused of some fairly monstrous crimes currently, I mean, whoever knew that Vince McMahon, the man, and Mr. McMahon, the evil TV character, were the same guy? Talk about a swerve. We here at the Blast Radius, we send you our fondest wishes that you will climb up to the top of that bureaucratic hell in a cell, clutching a steel chair between your teeth, and you will bravely leap from the top of that diabolical structure like a female MAGA Mick Foley and put the education department right through the Spanish announce table, ending the feud once and for all. Dateline America, Wednesday, 5 February. Left-wing activists staged protests all across the country earlier this week in numbers that were, how to put this nicely, perhaps not as robust as the organizers might have liked. In fact, it seems like they might be in the market for new organizers at this point, because it was difficult not to notice, in contrast to the fancy professional screen printed signs and banners that you normally see at these things, often the exact same banners and signs for protests on completely different sides of the country, which I'm sure that's just an amazing coincidence. But that year's protesters, they were waving mostly homemade, this year's protesters, homemade misspelled signs, which seems weird since these are all the people with the fancy college degrees, supposedly. But let's just say the festivities this year, they have been decidedly more muted than they were back in early 2017, back when there was a slight chance that you could declare, "We are the resistance," without normal people laughing at you for being a moron. But having said that, according to Newsweek, crowds that were charitably estimated as being in the hundreds and hundreds gathered in the state capitals of North Carolina and Michigan, chanting slogans as original as "Reject fascism, defend democracy," and "Hey, hey, ho, ho, Elon Musk has got to go." To which this reporter can only respond, "I've got a Wolverine, his name's Logan, and you dumb bastards need some new damn slogans." But it's important, I think, that these concerned young citizens, 99% of them still wearing COVID face diapers for some reason half a decade after the pandemic ended, are trying to raise awareness about the dangers of fascism, particularly this insidious new form of small government fascism where you oppress the people by shrinking and disempowering the central government and informing the tax-paying citizenry what their money actually gets spent on. Won't someone please put a stop to this terrifying nightmare? Dateline Washington, Thursday, 6 February. As per the latest reports, over 60,000 federal government bureaucrats have accepted President Donald Trump's buyout offer that was extended to every person in the federal workforce who's still been working from home in their jammies since the China virus pandemic ended half a decade ago. And I understand that 60,000 really isn't all that big a portion of the whole number, which should tell you a hell of a lot about the nature of the scam that has been perpetrated here with your tax dollars. A scam that might have kept on going forevermore if the election had turned out differently. The terms of the deal are, quote, "If you resign under this program, you will retain all pay and benefits regardless of your daily workload and will be exempted from all applicable in-person work requirements until September 30th, 2025, or earlier if you choose to accelerate your resignation for any reason," end quote. In other words, they're going to give you 8 months full salary and benefits for doing absolutely nothing, which shouldn't require much of an adjustment since you've mostly been doing absolutely nothing for at least the last several years. And don't even bother attempting to argue that you do just as much work from home in your jammies watching Netflix as you do physically going to work at the office 8 hours a day. And yeah, I will grant you the fact that back when you did physically show up at the office every day, you mostly spent your time surfing Tinder on your cell phone and playing fucking solitaire on your government desktop. But that's not important now. The important thing is that you are a waste of space and a waste of money, and it's probably time to go learn some actual fucking job skills. But at least we still have all of those fun TikTok videos that you guys made about the fun things you used to get up to every day while you were supposed to be working for the American taxpayer. Best of luck in your future endeavors. We're sure you're going to do great. Dateline Washington, Friday, 7 February. Mazie Hirono of Hawaii reestablished her lead in the race for stupidest U.S. senator this week as, during the confirmation hearing for the since confirmed Attorney General Pam Bondi, when she bizarrely declared that Bondi's government weaponization working group is a thing that's intended to weaponize the government in favor of Republicans rather than a thing that's designed to report on the weaponization efforts that have already been undertaken by Democrats. And I guess you need to have actually seen this thing in order to appreciate the sheer magnitude of human stupidity that's on display. But if you've ever heard Senator Mazie Hirono attempt to speak English, you probably get the gist of what I'm talking about. Now, normally senators have staffers on hand to rein in their worst impulses and to keep them as much as possible from making complete asses of themselves in public. But when your senator is Mazie Hirono, there's a limit to how well it is possible to do that job. So, long story short, Pam Bondi forms a working group that's supposed to document the weaponization of government agencies against conservatives and Republicans. And Mazie Hirono, since she is the absolute brightest shining star in the entire firmament of the American intellect, she decided she was going to confront Pam Bondi on this. And she boldly declared that if Pam Bondi formed a thing called the Government Weaponization Working Group, then obviously, it's because she wants to weaponize the government. I mean, it's right there in the name, guys. And thank God Almighty, we have brilliant minds like Sherlock Hirono around to clue us into these insidious schemes when they take place. It's like when you want to murder a bunch of people and you start a company called I Want to Murder a Bunch of People Incorporated, which frankly sounds like something Hunter Biden might actually do. And speaking of that, we should probably mention here before we go that horror of horrors, Geritol Joe Biden got his security clearance pulled the other day, which means Jim Biden and Hunter Biden can no longer make money off the privileged information that Joe Biden has access to, which kind of ruins the entire family business model, really. I mean, for God's sake, we had the very first great grandbaby Biden born just a few weeks ago, and he's already started half a dozen LLC shell companies. But on the bright side, they're finding so many bags of coke laying around in the White House, we might be able to keep paying for those transgender operas for Guatemalan mental patients. And here ends this week's Golden Age of Western Civilization News Roundup. I hope it was as edifying for you as it was for me. And with that, I toss it over to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, winner of the gold medal in ripping the arms off motherfuckers event at the 2024 Large Furry Hominid Olympics, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
All right, so I'm here this week with our conspiracy moment. Can you believe there is a significant portion of your brethren and sistren out there who vote that believe the earth is flat? So many of them, in fact, that if you spend any time at all cruising the byways and highways of YouTube, you can't help but come across at least a few of these folks. And you might assume they're all weird fundamentalist Christian types. They believe in the firmament and the separation of the waters from the heavens from the waters of the earth. But not all of these people are weird Christian fundamentalists. Some of them are George down the street, and he owns a business and you pay him to do things. Can you believe that mess?
Tactical nuke incoming!
I love that tactical nuke. It's such a nice palate cleanser.
It is. It needs a place to be, and I'm still playing with where to put it. Oh, let me take this off. Keep the miles low. Trade in.
Oh, I see a flat Earth picture. Where are we going?
So there is a significant portion of the population, especially on YouTube, that for whatever reason has decided the Earth is flat, possibly carried on the back of elephants. I'm not sure about that, but maybe a turtle. I don't know. Elephants all the way down.
I want it to be carried on the back of fucking water buffaloes.
Right. I'll go with that. But it's funny to me because most of the people, I mean, there are certain lists of employment that simply do not discuss flat Earth. And you might think it's because there's some kind of prohibition or something like that. But no, that's not it at all. You see, it's just that surveyors do a lot of math, right? And they do math based off of like sun and moon and stars and shit. Like it's necessary. When you have to calculate for curvature, it's in the math. Pilots, ship captains, these individuals are not the people that are sitting around talking about flat Earth. It's Uncle Fatty, but I'm not going to name any names.
and I know I give a lot of shout outs to Archimedes, but Archimedes had this shit all figured out like 3,500 years ago.
The freaking Egyptians needed a single sail around the south of Africa to realize, wait a second, we just lost all our constellations. How is that possible? Right? One ship once went around the tip. And
well, yeah, and you raise an excellent point, because obviously back in ancient times, people were much less widely traveled, but any person even back then who had been in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere knew that the sky looked different in each place. And that's probably because the world is round.
Yeah. And I mean, most of your mathematical civilizations developed various methods, or at least hypothetical methods of proofing Because in order for a particular culture to actually develop the concept, it would require that they either exist right on the equator and travel north and south of it regular, or that at some point in time, some trusted representative of this culture left from one quadrant and went to the other and made the necessary observations.
And I think that fact alone makes the ancient navigational achievements of the Polynesian peoples who lived almost right on the equator all the much more impressive. And even still today, the most learned experts are grasping for straws, trying to figure out how they pulled it off, and that is freaking awesome.
And it's amazing. And here we are, 2025, and you'll never find a sniper claiming that the earth is flat.
It's true, because they have to correct for the curvature of the earth if they want to make the shot.
Right. So, and there's other features, Coriolis effect and whatnot. But I mean, I have issues. I've been kicked out of flat earth chats before, like not because of anything I said, but because I didn't agree immediately. And it's not my highest point of my career. I'm not going to lie. When you're not welcome around.
The impressive thing is that you managed to get invited in the first place.
Well, I did kind of insist on myself. That might have been the error. But here's the thing.
Yeah, those are the flat Earth crowd. They're not really the thickest skinned people that ever lived.
I think it's so offended so quickly sometimes. But they recently did like a really big mass experiment to like in the debate altogether right now, and it broke the flat earth group into competing different theories to respond to this very trusted source, basically proving the earth is round with a 24-hour southern sun, right?
Oh yeah, they've had a real what do we want to call it, a schism in the flat earth community since flat earth homeboy got convinced to go down to Antarctica and see for himself.
Have you heard of the earth rising theory?
Lay it on me.
All right. Take all your flat earth stuff that you know and apply it. It all applies. Nothing changes, except the explanation for gravity is that earth is accelerating upward at 32 feet per second squared, which is why we have a firmament to protect us from anything that might cause damage.
But just throwing it out there. Isn't it only upward for people in the northern hemisphere?
Well, that's the thing, is like flat earth, like I said to begin with, flat earth rising.
Yeah, you just have to not think about certain things. It is the secret to accessing this secret knowledge.
Yeah. But I mean, I got no hate for anybody. I just stand my ground to state quite succinctly. I'm going to point and laugh at all of you.
You've got powers of tolerance that make me awestruck, if we're being honest.
Absolutely. You know what's funny about that clip that I played, the conspiracy clip? One, it's 12 seconds long, but only 4 seconds of it will play. And two, it's exactly the 4 seconds I want.
I feel like that's probably not an accident.
I don't. It was intended. It's like I said, it's twice as long. But
we're not in the business of conspiracy theories around here. One of the co-hosts occasionally wears a tinfoil hat, but that's okay. We are still not purveyors of conspiracy theories.
Well, I do have a conspiracy moment, but it's just to basically point and laugh at people in general. Like, I'm going to try not to stumble too deeply into the Alex Jones thicket, but you get my drift.
Do I need to do the thing about turning the fucking frogs gay? I feel like I do that every time, and it's played out now. I need a new Alex Jones line.
He actually,
the fucking frogs gay.
He made a statement one time that Hillary Clinton's vagina smells just like brimstone. That he has it on good authority as such. That is a quote, ladies and gentlemen. That is not my opinion. I've never been that close to a demon, brimstone, or Hillary Clinton's vagina for that matter.
Yeah, I feel like I don't even want to say the words Hillary Clinton's vagina, but I just did. So there it is.
So there it is. All right. So you brought in something. Is it 96?
Yes, Everest 96. Lots of YouTube drama about the Everest 96 disaster, which we touched on, I guess, last week or the week before last week, one or the other. But I was talking, as you recall, about and we were talking specifically about this youngster who had gone to the top of Everest and not acted as reverent as the Everest graybeard YouTube community would have liked. And one of the people I was talking about, one of the denizens of that Everest graybeard YouTube community, is a guy named Michael Tracy, who I only became aware of just recently after the news about Sandy Irvin's foot and boot being discovered by Jimmy Chin recently last year. And Michael Tracy seems to be promulgating certain theories about the Everest 96 disaster that involve a lot of very direct personal attacks upon the author John Krakauer, who was on the 96 expedition and wrote a very famous book about it afterward called Into Thin Air, which, if the people watching us right now have ever read a book about Everest expeditions, there's an overwhelming likelihood that that's the book. So, and I guess it only recently came to John Krakauer's attention that this guy on YouTube was just slamming him mercilessly, repeatedly, over and over and over again, basically trying to make him into the villain of the 96 Everest disaster, which isn't exactly fair. But the word of this evidently got back to John Krakauer, and he has now started a YouTube channel in order to put up some videos in which he directly rebuts all of these slanderous attacks by this Tracy character. And I think it's a good example of the kind of clout chasing that we often see on YouTube, where one guy sees another a prominent public personage, and they want to, who occupies a station that they themselves would like to occupy, and so attacking that person and their credibility by engaging in that sort of behavior, they hope to have some of that person's clout rub off on themselves. And that's really the impression I get with a lot of this stuff. And I put up a comment on one of the Krakauer videos yesterday. I said I'm glad to see this channel and these videos. I've only recently become aware of Michael Tracy, and I've wanted to hear your detailed rebuttal, since he so often makes a point for some reason of attacking you personally. So and on my live show tomorrow, which is this show right now, I'm going to give a shout out to this channel and hopefully steer a few subscribers his way. So John Krakauer Everest is the channel.
Right. I've got it. I thought I had it pinned. It's over here somewhere. Darned it.
And it's also it's fascinating, not just with the trying to attack other people to have some of their clout rub off on you, but it's really, really interesting how quickly these things take hold in the current media ecosphere. And I think John Krakauer, he's not a guy who spends a whole lot of time on YouTube. I didn't think that he had any idea until someone brought it to his attention that he was being portrayed so villainously.
So are you saying this guy started a completely fresh YouTube channel just to rebut against some asshole who's been throwing shit?
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
That's fucking glorious, dude. That's going to be a great channel.
Yeah.
Oh.
And
Clout chasing should be a sin. I think it might have been included in the other 5 commandments that were dropped at the top of the mount. Thou shalt not clout chase off of negative vibes. Anyway,
Yeah, and
so
but it is
what
so much a part of the YouTube media ecosystem, and I wish it wasn't.
was Green Boots a part of the 96 thing, or is
I
that just a
believe I
reference point?
believe Green Boots predates
Okay,
96.
I
I
thought
think
so.
Green Boots was a few years earlier, if I'm not mistaken.
But it's used as a reference points for the 96 event
Yeah.
because it was past Green Boots. And for anyone who
And
doesn't know, Green Boots is an individual who laid down and went to sleep on Mount Everest and never got up, and they're too high up to retrieve.
yep.
So
And
they're just there.
when you die up there, above 28,000 or whatever, there's no way to get you down, and it's too cold for you to decompose. So you just become a monument on the trail, basically.
You become a footnote in history and a reference by which people determine how close they are to the summit.
But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Green Boots was actually moved off of the main. I don't know what the word is, trail, but moved to a less conspicuous location.
I thought they just covered the cave opening. Like they laid down in that little cave opening, and the only thing sticking out were the boots. So if you don't walk over to it, you can't see the rest of the body without actually getting off the
Yeah.
trail. But you could see those bright green boots. And I thought they covered them up with rocks or something like that.
But you always read about people being shocked and horrified who are going up there for the first time, and they didn't have any idea that they were going to have to walk past corpses on the way.
How do you get to that point? I mean,
I know. I feel like you should have done more homework before you went up there. If you
not
really
even
didn't
that.
know that, because who doesn't know that? Who the fuck doesn't know that?
Not even the homework, not even the research. I'm talking about just talking to the people that you are going to be ascending with. Just
Yeah.
interacting with the other humans in the area. You should find out at some point in time there's 400 bodies up there or something like that.
When you're at base camp for 2 or 3 weeks, because you have to sit at base camp acclimatizing for that long, it seems like that would come up in conversation, that somebody who's been up there would inform you that, yeah, you're going to be walking past a lot of dead folks on the way up.
Right. I mean, not like a high point of conversation, but like deep in the dark, windy night when you're up and everybody else is asleep, and this one guy's like, you do realize.
And I'm glad you played this, because they just made reference to a trailer for the 2015 Everest movie, and I think that's where a bunch of this first got started. That people saw that movie and then started kind of researching the incident for themselves and coming to their own conclusions, and probably, I expect, some of the YouTube channels in question probably got their start based on that movie as well, because that's just what happens.
Everest
They
is
make a
the
movie
villain.
about an historical event, and it's going to come back into public prominence, and so let's use it to get whatever kind of clout we can get off of it, and hopefully make some money.
Everest is the villain. Everest
Yep.
tries to kill every single person that goes above base camp. At any point in time after base camp 1, anything happen. If you stub a toe, if you get a splinter under a fingernail, you are now in a life-threatening situation. Without proper medical care, within the next week, you will have medical conditions that will need surgery and whatnot. And staying in that zone for 2 or 3 weeks means that you are very likely to take small injuries, because it's cold, brother, and you're out of breath, and it's hard to move. Everything weighs 10 times more because you don't have the oxygen to do what you need to do. It's a fight for survival.
A person who is from sea level needs that many days and weeks just to be able to function in the place where the Sherpas have lived for thousands of years. and it's such a freaking amazing thing about human evolution that
I Actually,
Because I mean,
that's an interesting point.
the Sherpas actually have different physiology, where they process oxygen differently and more efficiently just because they've been living up at that altitude for so long, and that's freaking awesome.
But there might be more to it. If you'll remember, the Himalayan plateau is where the Denisovans were found, right? They're a kissing cousin to Neanderthal, very similar but quite different. One of their features is they have slightly larger bones, and when you look at them at under a microscope, the little blood vesicle holes that go in and out of the bones are bigger. They're not much bigger, but significantly larger enough to make you question, why would this adaptation take place? But then you look at where it took place on top of the Himalayan plateau and you go, oh, high altitude. And of course, these people in this region have more Denisovan DNA in their genealogy than anyone else on planet Earth. And they're the ones that happen to have this ability. Folks in the Andes have a very similar trait.
Yep. And
But-
Yon God, I apologize. I will stop saying racist things. All humans are exactly the same.
But we can be racist if you like. I got time. I'm from Georgia. I mean, I can teach you. I'm just saying. There's actually a handful of studies going in to investigate that kind of stuff, and I can't wait for some of the results because I think it'll be intriguing. Because we only know like a percentage, like it's a comparative study that we have, and so it doesn't really show you how much of a genealogy we're talking about from Denisovans. It tells you more about Neanderthal. The study that's going on now should close the book on how much admixture had taken place between Denisovans and humans.
Yeah, and high altitude medicine is still an emerging discipline where we're still discovering new knowledge all the time.
Right.
I mean, it's only 100 years ago that people started having the ability to breathe bottled oxygen
Well, I
on
mean,
high altitude mountain climbs. And
there's more
and how
to
much
it than just oxygen, though. I mean,
of course
that
there
is
is.
the big thing.
It's also physiology. That's why the Sherpas do so well.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at it, basically from the time you go above, once you enter base camp 1, you are becoming jerky slowly.
Yes.
It's almost impossible to drink enough to offset everything that you sweat because water boils at like 100 and like 98 or 99 degrees. I mean, your body temperature is almost enough to boil water at that altitude. So,
and once you get above 26 or 27,000, you lose the desire and the ability to eat food anymore because
I said that wrong. 198 degrees.
Because from your body's perspective, it's more efficient to just consume your muscles and tissue than to digest new food. Because that's how freaking high up you are.
Right. You're in a survival instance every second. I would argue from base camp, but base camp 1 is relatively safe, right? As compared to like anywhere else on that climb.
Yep.
Emergency services can remove you from base camp 1. It is not easy and it takes time.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Beck Weathers, who survived the 96 disaster, he was the highest altitude helicopter rescue that's ever been done. And they had to really sweet talk that pilot into even attempting it, because that's a whole other area of aeronautics, trying to fly a helicopter that high when the air is that thin.
It's really wild mathematics too. The mathematics of trying to fly a specially designed helicopter, especially built to fly especially high, means you've got things like modifications for higher RPMs on the rotors, modifications to the rotors for steeper bite, and the whole time,
and more restrictive fuel loads and weight limits.
Right. right. You can bring one person down because the rest of that
Mhm.
thing's full of fuel. That's it. And that's if you get there, get them and go like
Yeah,
immediately.
and I think that's what the deal was when they went up and rescued Mr. Weathers. It was just him and the pilot on the way down, and it was still a closely run thing because you know you're not supposed to fly freaking helicopters at 27,000 feet.
I mean, even specially designed helicopters are
Yeah,
sketchy because the wind, the air is so thin that when enough wind occurs to actually move the bird, it moves it suddenly because a little breeze doesn't touch it. It's so thin. So
look at what they
it's,
had to do to make that little tiny helicopter fly on Mars. That's a good illustration of the problem.
yeah,
They needed the tiniest possible, lightest possible. They had two contra-rotating propellers that had to spin unbelievably fast just to get that thing off the ground when the atmospheric gases are as thin as they are, which is probably a pretty decent analog, you know, sea level, so to speak, on Mars versus Everest level on Earth.
well, I mean, you're still at about what 100 bars difference, but yeah, no, it's not a bad analogy. It's like going to the surface of an alien planet. I mean, everything freezes. There's another condition that ties into that altitude sickness that a lot of people don't consider. When you spend a lot of time with limited food intake and whatnot, it influences how your body does body heat. And if you spend a lot of time colder than a given thing, I think it's like 97.9 or something. Like it's not very far off of your natural body temperature. You develop this condition where your body makes white blood cells but doesn't make red blood cells because you don't get warm enough to actually make the red blood cells. And so the white blood cells end up crowding out the red blood cells. And you end up with a condition where you're basically, and this can happen at any altitude, but it also happens at altitude. After you spend a month.
Yeah, and that's a
Oh,
big part of the reason why you should never eat snow for hydration.
right. That's why you carry a can of Sterno so you can melt snow.
Yep.
Something along those lines. Yeah. And
Yeah, and if you get to the point where you have no ability to melt snow for water, then you are in a whole boatload of trouble.
yeah, because you can't use your your body heat at all. There are
Yeah.
300 people have died climbing Mount Everest with approximately 200 bodies still on the mountain. Mm. Some are completely lost because they fail some distance and there's really no paths to go to places where you stop.
Yeah, because there's a lot of places, you know, when you get between the South Col and the summit where if you go off the edge, you're falling 7,000 feet.
Right, you're done.
Pretty much straight down, and it's anybody's guess where you wind up.
Yeah, no, nobody's gonna look for you. So, this is just the opening panel for this video, specifically about those who were lost to Everest. I think Everest is a nightmare. I don't know why anyone would bother taking time out of their freaking day to go to Mount Everest. It is merely
Well,
a
and, you know,
financial
not
flex.
to mention the 80,000 bucks or whatever it costs now, and you get to the top and you're just standing in line like you were at fucking Walmart.
Right, you could do that at freaking Starbucks and get you a latte.
Yeah.
It don't cost 80,000 bucks.
Like and all, you know what? How is there any awe and wonder left in the thing at that point? When you just you get 20 seconds at the top and a photograph, and all you did was stand in line all day, and I was the 5,914th person to summit Everest, and who gives a shit at that point?
on
Just who cares?
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Another thing is, and I've never talked to someone directly, but I've looked at a whole bunch of interviews of people who've been to Everest. Every single one of them was completely done with the concept of going to the summit when they got
Yeah.
to the summit. They just
Yeah.
turn around and walk back down. Like there is nothing left to do up there. It's such a misery getting there that even the most dedicated and dynamic people, with one exception, the gentleman who did the backflip, I've got to give him daps. That's a big balls move to have enough youth and vivacity left when you reach the summit of Everest to do a backflip is absolutely amazing.
I watched a couple of his other videos this week. He did a Mount McKinley video, and I forget what the other one was, but he's got a few of them, and I
Yeah.
really dig his stuff. He's a fine young filmmaker. I mean, as far as that kind of cinema verite, where you've got camera on your
Right.
head, camera in your hand, and it takes a unique skill to do that well, and I think he does it well.
It's some people do it. I can't see myself walking around with a camera on my head or my chest
I know.
or anything like that.
But at the same time, as we also talked about last week, I can see the point of people who say, you're endangering yourself and others by focusing on your video production more than climbing the death-defying mountain that you're trying to climb. And I guess obviously there's a push and pull, and you have to find a balance between the one and the other. But I sure do enjoy the videos. I ain't gonna lie.
May 30th, 2024, Ben Ayers. Two people were sliding to their deaths from Mount Everest, and it was dead silent. Surrounded by people, they just watched them fall because there is nothing that can be done.
Yep, not much else you can do except watch. I guess the only choice is watch or turn away.
Well, everyone else is so exhausted getting to the point where they've gotten to, they don't even cry out.
Yeah, and that's there's a powerful passage in the Krakauer book, which I think he reads out again in one of the videos he just published on the new channel, where he tries to put it into words, the kind of survival mode that you're in at that point. I think he described it as being a knight in a tournament with a helm on your head, and you're just staring out of the tiny eye slit in the armor, worried only about keeping yourself alive because you don't have the time or the energy to worry about keeping other people alive.
I mean, you're too busy turning into jerky.
You are too busy turning into jerky. You're goddamn right.
I mean, the Peruvians used to stick their dead up on high mountains above the death zone specifically to mummify them. So
it's the best preservation method that nature furnishes. That's for damn sure.
facts.
Look at that. Look at that. That's freaking Walmart on Black
Right.
Friday.
You go up there, you don't even get a latte. There should be
That's
some
people,
Indian
that's
costume
people
coffee.
lined up for a 60-inch flat screen TV.
Black Friday. Oh my God, dude.
And you pay $80,000 just to be part of that scene. And nope.
Yeah.
If you were paying me $80,000, I would have to think about it.
So I'm a little confused with what I'm seeing. Everybody's facing the same direction. Have they got a conveyor belt on the other side? Like
They might as well just build one of those like flat speedway escalator thingies like they have at the airport.
right?
Yeah. And
Wow.
so back to Michael Tracy when I was listening to the first 3 of the Krakauer rebuttal videos. He points out that Michael Tracy, and I didn't know this, nobody who watches his channel and his videos would probably know this, that the dude has never set foot on the Nepali side of Mount Everest. He has made one ascent from the Chinese side. He apparently declared a few years ago that he was going to be the guy to go and find Sandy Irvin, and he was going to start out from the Chinese side, but I guess Jimmy Chin beat him to that prize, and so now he's just going to be pissed off and try to destroy other people. But I think it was perfectly reasonable for Krakauer to say, how authoritative is this guy's opinion about my expedition in 96 when he has never even set foot on that side of the mountain?
Yeah.
And furthermore, he points out that this guy never approached me for an interview. I would have given him an interview. He just started attacking me over and over and over and over again, which goes back to the whole maybe this is all about clout chasing thing.
Right. Nope. No, sir. No, sir. I saw that shit. No, sir. Sasquatches. We're Sasquatches. We're not Yetis. Yetis can handle that. We have mountains
distinctly
not like
different subspecies.
Yeah, not at all. Not. Give me a canoe and a fishing pole, man. Like, no.
Yeah, the Sasquatch is more of a forest creature.
This is true. Hit $1 million up there. Go get it, boys. Go get it, boys.
Go and get it.
Yeah.
You own this. You got it.
I was hoping to go over Green Boots because I just cannot remember the circumstances of that one.
I think Green Boots has his own Wikipedia article, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look it up.
I'm sure. I was just hoping to catch a little skit of the video. But I'm an annoying individual and I like details. Oh, he's
That's
so
why
screwed.
We love you.
He is so screwed. Yeah, you don't get to come down from there.
No.
Wow.
Ever. You're gonna be a monument up there for hundreds of years.
Damn right. Sheesh, bro. Like, I just don't get it though. I don't get it. I mean, we could go to the beach. You can go fishing down there.
I'm dropping this link in the private chat. All right. Green Boots is the body of an unidentified climber that became a landmark on the main northeast ridge route of Mount Everest. There exist several theories regarding the body's identity. The most popular one claims the body belongs to Tsuwang Paljor, an Indian member of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police Expedition who died as a part of the 1996 climbing disaster on the mountain, wearing green Koflok mountaineering boots. All expeditions from the north side encountered the body curled in the limestone alcove cave at 8,500 meters until it was moved in 2014.
Right.
So they did move it.
I wonder who those big bald bastards were, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
seriously.
Most people free boots. Fuck. We have savage freaking chatters over here, bro.
Oh, what do we got?
Homie says free boots.
Free boots. Yep. Free boots, and they each come with a foot.
Yeah, an extra foot. Everybody needs a hand, right? But here's a foot.
Just like Sandy Irvin.
Oh, too soon.
I want to know where the rest of Sandy Irvin is. I feel like the mystery has only deepened.
Yeah, no. When you find somebody's foot and you don't find the body, that does tend to raise a few eyebrows because we don't know exactly what happened up there.
I know, especially when it's one of the most notorious missing person mysteries of the last 100 years. I mean, how tantalizing is that?
Much of a mystery, bro. He went somewhere he shouldn't have gone.
But how awesome for Jimmy Chin that he just winds up being the guy who stumbles upon Sandy Irvin's foot. Of all the luck.
Like, there's got to be 200 boots up there. You know what I mean? And he just happened to find that one.
Oh, I know. And how does it come to be where it was? What does that process look like? I mean, is that just all glaciology?
Some of it, I think perhaps someone found it, recognized it for what it was, but didn't have the ability to bring it all the way back.
It's interesting you bring that up because there is a theory, and I think Michael Tracy is one of its proponents, come to think of it, that some Chinese climbers actually found Sandy Irvin's body back in 1960 and removed it from the mountain and found his camera and removed that too. And the Chinese government has never divulged anything about it.
That's the thing, though, is the camera. I mean, let's be honest, bro. Nobody would question where the body went if the camera were to pop up.
Damn right.
Questions would end. If we find that camera, it answers a few basic questions. Did they make it to the summit? Which the implication is no, because some of the things they said they were going to do weren't done when the next crew got to the summit. And so there was no Karen with a photograph. There was no sign that they had actually been there. And their intent was to go there and leave sign that they had been there. Right?
Yes. Yes, and Mallory, that was especially Mallory. That was his specific intention, was to leave evidence at the summit.
Right, incontrovertible, undeniable proof that he had summited, and take pictures. They had a list of things they were going to do, and they just never came back. And was it? I mean, like, was it a fall? Did someone break a leg? They were going pre-oxygen tanks, and so
they did have oxygen. They had two cylinders each. Yeah.
Okay. So that's probably what happened, is they ran out of oxygen.
Yeah, that was that. Well, and that's part of the reason why there is pretty significant evidence to believe that they might have made the summit, because they were the first to attempt it with bottled oxygen, which was like a space age technological advancement at that time.
Right.
And based on the way they found Mallory's body, it was obvious that the two of them were roped to each other when they fell. So which would tend to indicate that they were descending.
Right.
But but there's no way to know.
We got a question from chat, and I'm wondering if you have a thought on this. I know why you don't skydive off of Everest. Do you?
People have snowboarded off of it.
The reason you don't skydive off of Everest is when you're coming down in a parachute, it's not very thick air. But also,
there's not much air to cause friction on your canopy.
But that's not the big deal. The big deal is a combination of the winds that are around Everest, because it is so much higher than the surrounding mountains. But keep in mind, like 8 or 9 of the tallest mountains in the world, like, there's a couple out on other continents that are taller, but as far as in general, that whole area is just basically a no-go zone due to altitude. Everything from base camp up. And so if you come down anywhere other than your target, and that target is not the base camp, that's your ass. You're dead. You don't get to tell people that story.
Yeah, there's actually another Everest story I want to talk about, and entertain the people for 90 seconds while I pull it up.
All right, giggity. How many M&Ms does it take to screw in a light bulb? No, actually, I want to rant a little bit about homesteading channels. I have an issue. I've watched a bunch of them. I've lived on a homestead. I've built homesteads. I've helped found a few. Most of these people are completely full of trash. They're not doing the thing they're claiming to do. They're doing the thing by having a basically bottomless bank account and a nearby city somewhere. The ability to just ride into town and go get a whole bunch of whatever the hell you need makes a big difference when homesteading. Did you get a refill? Good girl.
All right, you
Oh.
want to hear a crazy Mount Everest story?
Yeah, hit me with it.
The first flight over Mount Everest was undertaken in April 1933. They were the two craft were piloted by Douglas Hamilton, also known as Lord Clydesdale, and David McIntyre, with Stuart Blacker and Sidney Bonnet along as observers. The expedition was financed by Lucy Lady Houston and led by Peregrine Fellows. Has there ever been a more British name than that? I don't think so.
Hold up, bro. I want to get all these people together for my Avengers cast. They sound awesome.
Seriously.
I mean, Edgar's. What was that dude's name?
All right, so
Douglas.
Douglas Hamilton, David McIntyre, Stuart
First name,
Blacker.
middle name. Hold up. First name, middle name.
Yep.
Douglas.
Two Douglases. So nice they named him twice.
I bet he said that shit to his wife. I bet you his family tree doesn't branch that often.
So it appears that Douglas Hamilton was the prime mover behind the plan, and then the inventor Stuart Blacker joined the expedition. He was an experienced pilot who had served in the British Indian Army from 1907 to 1932. Air Commodore Peregrine Fellows was brought in to lead the expedition and to head its planning. Fellows and Blacker obtained the necessary permits from the Air Ministry India office and the government of Nepal to allow the flight to occur. Nepal granted permission for only one single flight, while the 13th Dalai Lama of Tibet refused permission for the aircraft to enter Tibetan airspace. Blacker also convinced the Royal Geographic Society that a flight would provide valuable information for the planned 1933 British Mount Everest expedition, which aimed to climb to the summit. A flight might also search for evidence of George Mallory and Andrew Irvine, who had disappeared during an attempt to reach the summit during the 1924 expedition. If Mallory and Irvine had reached the summit before dying on the descent, they might have left some record of abandoned equipment at the summit. The Royal Geographic Society agreed to support the expedition. Should I keep going?
Give me 1 second. That's one of the reasons that people say they didn't make the summit, is because if you're up there with an empty oxygen bottle and there's no hope of refilling it, you just set that sucker down and walk away.
Yep.
It's useless until you get down. So carrying the extra weight's a negative intention. What's up, Rand Star? Watt Life, welcome in. Go ahead.
Clydesdale decided to use two biplane aircraft for the attempt. The first, Westland PV-6, and the second was a modified Westland PV-3. He selected David Fowler McIntyre, a flight lieutenant from 602 Squadron, to pilot the aircraft. Each pilot would be accompanied by an observer in the second seat. Blacker accompanied Clydesdale in the PV-3, and Sidney R.G. Bonnet, a cinematographer for Gaumont British News, accompanied McIntyre in the PV-6. Both aircraft were modified to enclose the observer positions, but retained the open pilot's cockpits. Oxygen systems were installed to keep the crew alive using oxygen masks. The crews wore multiple layers of sheepskin clothing, and the aircraft were modified to provide connections for heated flying suits. To save weight, there were no parachutes. Special fuel was developed that would not freeze at the low temperatures that were expected. The supplies of fuel and oxygen were sufficient for only 15 minutes at high altitude. To obtain a photographic mosaic of the terrain, each aircraft was equipped with a fixed downward-pointing film camera in the fuselage, while the observers carried still cameras. Bonnet selected a Williamson automatic Eagle 3 camera for the task.
But think about it, being the first guy to fly over the highest point on Earth.
Yeah, for my money, it's just as auspicious an achievement as Hillary and Norgay, right? Isn't it? I mean, it's a death-defying effort.
Yeah, no, I was fixing to say it's a death sentence. I mean, you're flying up into the death zone at a time period when none of the equipment to do so. This is actually part of what developed the equipment we used
Yeah, all of the equipment you need, you have had to invent yourself.
Exactly. And that's impressive in and of itself with nothing else attached.
Should I read on?
Sure.
Both aircraft were shipped from Britain to Karachi by sea, arriving in February. The crews then flew the aircraft to Purnia in Bihar state, where they were based at Lal Balu Airfield, approximately 50 miles south of Mount Everest. The journey from England had taken 25 days. So that's the level of aircraft technology we have in the time we're talking about. To fly from England to Nepal takes over 3 weeks. The flight would require clear weather over the mountain, which had to be reconnoitered using daily 5:30 a.m. flights by a third aircraft, a Puss Moth flown by Fellows. For 9 days, conditions were adjudged to be unsuitable. While they awaited clear weather, the expedition crews relaxed by swimming until an encounter with a crocodile required McIntyre to shoot the animal. Okay, well, I was not expecting crocodiles, but moving on. On 3 April, Fellows reported no clouds between the airfield and the summit. Winds were below 40 miles per hour, but there was lots of dust in the atmosphere. Fellows described the conditions as reasonably satisfactory. What a great feat of British understatement that is. The expedition took off from Lulabalu at 8:25 a.m. on the 3rd of April. After 9 a.m., they reached their maximum altitude of 31,000 feet. As they passed over Lhotse, the fourth highest mountain in the world, located 2 miles south of Everest. Downward air currents induced by the mountains then caused both aircraft to lose about 1,500 feet. It's almost like unexpected things happen when you're flying airplanes in places where nobody's ever flown airplanes before. Bennett briefly lost consciousness due to hypoxia after damaging his oxygen line. He successfully repaired the leak with a handkerchief. A strap holding McIntyre's oxygen mask broke, forcing him to hold it in place with one hand while flying the aircraft with the other. At 10:05 a.m., both planes passed approximately 100 feet over the summit. McIntyre required 3 attempts to pass over the summit. Clydesdale looked for signs of Mallory and Irvin, but saw none. The aircraft then had to make a sharp turn to avoid entering Tibet. Both aircraft returned to the airfield about 3 hours after they had departed. News of the successful flight was sent to London by telegram. The reply congratulated the team, but forbade them from repeating the feat due to the dangerous problems experienced with the oxygen supply. However, the quality of the photographs taken on the first flight was compromised by dust, so the crews determined to ignore the instructions from London and make a second flight. They successfully did so on 19 April when the conditions were clearer. This time they were able to obtain high-quality photographs of the surface. So good for them.
So let's which way would you take?
I mean, are we talking the Tibet side versus the Nepal side?
Well, no, I think both of these are Tibet side. These are the. Well, I guess it can't be. There ain't but 2 approaches, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I think the Nepal side is the one that's more often traversed, just because it's more difficult getting permits from the CCP to climb from the Tibet side.
Right. And I don't know. I kind of agree with that to a degree. Oh, wow. I don't know. I wouldn't go, bro. I wouldn't go. If you gave me $80,000, I would look at you and be like, and what am I supposed to do for it? We want you to go to the top of Mount Everest. You got a helicopter? Like, I'm not.
But what an absolute death mission that those guys managed to overfly the summit in 133. They had no business accomplishing that feat. They were
basically utilizing a motivated kite.
That was absolutely freaking badass, and they all should have died.
I mean, they should have just disappeared. We should be sitting here talking about the mystery of that flight.
Yeah,
right?
yes. You're absolutely damn right. We should still be looking for the wreckage of those aircraft, but they managed to pull it off. And
said in the same breath with Mallory and folks like Singleton and the whole nine, just but we're not, because they were better than that. He fixed his ship with a handkerchief, bro. British pluck, just steel man straight through the
Yes,
middle of it.
and
Just
how
Iron
can
Man this
you
shit right out.
how can you hear a story like that and not stand in awe and wonder and respect of the power of human bravery and ingenuity?
Right? I mean, they say British officers never duck, and I always thought that was kind of a dumb idea, but I get the morale concept of it. But wow.
Do you mind if I digress to a different topic briefly?
Yeah,
Because you
sure.
kind of
We got time.
you lit a fire in my mind. I saw the news yesterday that the woke leftist British government of Sir Keir Starmer and the Stormtroopers is open to beginning a dialogue on slavery reparations with certain Caribbean nations. And look,
This
I
is
know
David
wokesters,
Lammy's baby, ain't it? David Lammy?
I know wokesters got a woke. This is what you do, but I see a thing like that, and I begin to ask certain questions in my mind that I might like to pose to the authors of such a policy. I might pose the question, for example, so which country was it in 1820 that declared war on the Atlantic slave trade without anybody asking them to and eradicated it within 20 years?
Yeah, just put it down like a bad puppy. It was like, no, we're not going to do that no more. And the world.
I feel like that country doesn't owe reparations to anybody. Maybe that's just me.
I'm not sure anyone owes reparations anywhere. None of the people actually affected directly by the slavery conventions of the late 1900s or late 1800s are alive today. And so eat me.
And also, once we
You are
begin
talking,
down
sir,
that path,
hold on. Let me
ahead.
finish this. You are talking
ahead.
about visiting the sins of the father onto the son. How many generations forward do we get to sing this song? No, I'm not playing that game. I don't have to participate in your delusions. Be gone.
And how many generations backward do we go? Because I, for one, think it's about damn time that the Akkadians paid some reparations for enslaving the Elamites in 2400 BC. How long are we going to let that injustice go unaddressed? I mean, where do you draw the line? Where do you actually draw the line?
For that matter, the Lakota have a pretty damn big chip on their shoulder about a few of the Comanche details from back in the past, but we don't got no writings about that. But it's just local stories, right?
And the Apache enslaved the Navajo for quite a few years, and
Right.
we haven't heard any
Well,
reparation
hold
demands
on, bro.
there.
The Apache enslaved everybody. Like that was part of their.
You raise a salient point.
I mean, not the Sioux didn't always enslave people. They just beat them up for a little while and then let them join the club.
The Apache did not fuck
Apaches-
around.
They were not. I talked to a dude, and this might be a later conspiracy moment if I can find the details on it. But he believed fervently that when the fall of the Mayan Empire took place down south, that the peoples that were responsible for that entire death cult, the survivors of it, relocated to the Apache area, and that's why they were so viciously savage. There's a few things that point in this kind of loose direction. There is a similarity in lithic technology of specifically the Apache that does not fit the surrounding tribes that are there. The stories say that the Apache showed up one night, killed, and started eating folks. They just waylaid the entire freaking country and murdered everybody, and anyone else who showed up got chained up and used for slaves until they died. They were just vicious, and that sounds like Mayans.
Oh, there are more horror stories about the Apache than all the other Indian tribes combined.
That's because all the other Indian tribes.
They were.
That's because all of the other Indian tribes told us those stories before we met them, and then we got our own.
Yep.
That whole burying up to the neck
We're
and
not supposed to talk about any of that.
Well, I'm just saying the whole burying up to the neck and fire ant bed, that's Apache, baby. Like, that wasn't one of those things that it's like scalping was French. That wasn't actually a thing that was done to natives to get paid.
We are required by our woke overlords to adopt a view of history that says all the Native American tribes were living in perfect peace and harmony with each other, just
I'm gonna hurt
selling
your feelings.
their wares by the side of the road up until the day the white man arrived, and then all the violence started. There was never any violence before that until Whitey showed up. It was the
Well,
goddamn Spaniards that did it.
to an extent, I can almost agree with that point because we do violence on a level that most other cultures just their concept of warfare involves counting coup on their enemies, and our concept of warfare includes the word genocide. So, just saying, but when the Spanish came to the New World, they brought with them a plethora of diseases. But when they returned to the Old World, they took one with them. Now, there may have been others, but they for sure took one back with them. Syphilis.
Good old syphilis.
All of us, I think it was syphilis, or was it? It's one
The
of the
gift that keeps on
STDs.
giving.
Yeah, right. Talk about brainworms, bro.
Yeah, Al Capone can tell you about that one.
What's up, Scully? Good to see you, bud. Appreciate you coming through. Yeah, right. I mean, see that syphilis is an insidious thing. You can have it for years and never have a freaking clue that you've got it. You're just kind of weird and sometimes spout off at the wrong moments, and that's it. That's the only symptoms. You're slightly off kilter.
Dad says weird things sometimes now.
Right. So Comanches do kind of need an honorable mention in that. He's not wrong, but they are nowhere near the Mayans, bro. You don't say Comanche and Mayan in the same freaking sentence. You can say Mayans and Apaches in the same sentence. They took in a special. Anyway, that's not the conversation.
And in our cultural relativism game that we are supposed to play now, when we back project our view of history, we are absolutely not allowed to contemplate the possibility that European colonizers might have viewed indigenous American peoples as savages because they saw them engaging in savagery. We're not allowed to talk about that.
I mean, you kind of have to break that whole thing up into several different time periods. The very first time white man set foot on the American continent, almost guarantee you they brought diseases with them. Now, whether it was the Irish or the freaking Celts or the damn Vikings or the English, if you want to buy into some of those later Christian tales, regardless, they would have brought certain diseases with them. There would have been a notable drop in populations. And the only places we really see that take place, there is the Iroquois nations have some stories about a period of darkness where a group of giants showed up and just chopped people up and left, and sometimes took pieces of them with them, and then they left, and then everyone got sick. And I can't remember what the little the story title is, because it's a little different in different tribes, but the theory is that goes back to the interaction with the Vikings. But if all they do is show up and chop people up, there's not a whole lot of chances of passing on too many diseases. I have to believe that the Spanish were much more lusty. They do appear to have been.
I don't think there was ever any intention by European colonizers to afflict indigenous populations with unknown diseases, because even if they had wanted to do that, how could they have known they could? They couldn't. But getting back to the point I was attempting to make, let's say, a guy like Cortez, he comes ashore. He might have the best of intentions. He might be coming into this with a sort of ecumenical, multicultural view on things. He wants to understand these people and their culture and their practices and whatever. But he goes to their capital city, to their most important religious ceremony of the year, and he sees children getting their hearts cut out and their corpses tossed down the steps of the pyramid. And for people who are bred and raised on a certain version, very specific version of medieval Christianity, when you are confronted with a scene like that, it is difficult, I would submit, not to conclude that you have found yourself in the pit of hell and you are viewing some very demonic shit. I think you're muted.
Does Vasco Pizarro ring a bell? Am I saying that right?
There's Vasco da Gama and Francisco
Gama.
Pizarro. Oh no, Fernando Pizarro.
I mixed up two of them. Hell, that might explain my
Yeah.
confusion right there. So one of these guys brought a Jesuit priest with him as a scribe. And we don't have the logs from the actual ship, which is a little unusual, probably in the Vatican, if I had to guess. But we do have the logs, some of them, from the Jesuit priests that went with him. Of course, as with all Jesuit manuscripts, cannibals. But we're going to skip that. We're just going to hop right over the top of that because we really don't have a whole lot of evidence of cannibalism in South America. But this guy sailed as far up the Amazon as they could take their boat and then came back down. According to the writings, it took him 6 weeks or something like that, because on the way up they stopped at a bunch of places. On the way back down they just left. Right on the way into the Amazon basin, thousands of people, everywhere they went, people crowded the edge of the water to wave at them and to look at the ships. And there were little towns and villages and people all up and down the Amazon. On their way back down, nothing but funeral pyres. Not a single soul came out to wave at the ships. And that is almost a perfect, like, if a pandemic has been induced and that's how that happens. That is exactly the timeline. 6 weeks, you come back, you might see a few bits of smoke here and there. You're talking about like 9 or 10 different diseases that were dumped on the population simultaneously, none of which they had any defense against. So we're talking.
Can you imagine if you took a North Sentinel Islander and dropped them to the middle of a modern civilization, how quickly they would be felled by some disease?
I don't know. They've been eating white people for a long time, dude. I've had this conversation before. I had a buddy of mine, ATL. Wait, did I get you?
You got me.
I was dead serious, though. I'm not even joking.
You're a bastard, but you got me.
Yeah. That's actually a challenge we've got back and forth to see which one of us can make the other break character. I win.
He wins.
So, but no, seriously. North Sentinel Islanders aren't quite as isolated as the South America was at the time period. Because consider this: okay, let's take the surface implications. Christopher Columbus, 1492, wham bam, thank you ma'am, syphilis and all of the diseases of the old world happen all at the same time, right? Poof. General trading in the southeast largely leads to the infection of the Algonquin, the Iroquois, your Sioux, your Comanches. Those are all nomadic types, and they move and infect others deeper into the continent. 20 years later, Pizarro comes down the Amazon and happens to encounter the same band of infections. There was nowhere to go. You think when the end comes, you'll go hide in some cabin in the woods your grandpa built, and that's been the plan for 30 years. There's nowhere to go today. And if you go somewhere and try to hide, the federal government's liable to come dig you out like Waco or Ruby Ridge or some shit just because they misunderstand what you're doing.
Oh, guaranteed that's going to happen. Maybe not so much anymore, but
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know, dude. The first of all, the SCOTUS has been on the freaking ball about the Second Amendment for the past like year and a half, dude. They've been fucking zingers and they've all but completely detoothed the ATF. Like they can no longer come after your short barrel rifles. They can no longer come after hell. There is currently a debate open in the gun sphere about fully automatic assault weapons. And when I say assault weapons, I am talking about your Mod Deuce with the butterfly at the back. Like, I'm not talking the AR-30. No, none of that shit. I'm talking a fucking like 50 caliber anti-aircraft. Like, you can go buy that shit. It's debatable currently.
I don't trust the Roberts court any farther than I can throw it, but I'm willing to let them surprise me. And
they have
more
been
power to them if they do.
There's two decisions that came down the pike a couple of years ago that's leading to all of these like amazing SCOTUS returns. The Bruen decision stating that history and context, right? So it doesn't matter if it's a new gun, if it's in large public use and it's publicly available, then it's fine. It's like your basic AK, your basic AR-15. There are more of these guns on the street and they're not causing problems than there are freaking breathalyzers, right? So that's the proof in the pudding that these things aren't causing the problem. That being said, with the return of Chevron deference, this cut the testicles out from under the ATF, allowing them to interpret their laws as they see fit, and force them to interpret the law as it is written through legal diction.
Well, if we can get a sufficient groundswell to get rid of the Department of Education, which it looks like is going to happen, then we should also be able to get a sufficient groundswell to get rid of the goddamn ATF.
The ATF is an extraneous organization written in by the president.
Does not need to exist.
In the very first fucking place. It never should have had anything. It was originally supposed to deal with alcohol and like money laundering or freaking counterfeiting or some damn shit like that.
Yeah,
and they just threw explosives and guns.
And it's just grown into another fucking bureaucratic goddamn tentacle monster.
It's the FBI. It's Homeland Security. It's the Fed boys. Anytime it's
the minor league FBI.
Right. These are the Intel boys that didn't make it into Intel.
Yep.
So
yeah, and we've had enough of their antics.
Hey, I got something coming down the pipe. It's a couple of weeks out, but I might like to tap you for an alternate if something happens and I can't attend. I have a debate coming up with a lawyer. I believe she's out of Florida. And
if you're going to tap me, I better get dinner and a movie first.
I mean, I'll do what I can, baby. I don't like roll cheap. A cheap date. I know that, girl. What I'm saying is, she did a short. We had a conversation in the comments, which YouTube immediately scrubbed, and I don't know why, but what came down the pipe is this. She is very selective deportation and anti-optics that are currently taking place. Like the optics are all wrong. She hates them. She thinks there's another way to get to the same results without the terrible optics that's taken. You got to admit they're bad. I mean, when you're arresting a guy wearing a Trump jacket, that doesn't look good. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, it does. It kind of does, though, on the other end of it. But that's the basis of the debate: is not just whether or not deportation is legitimate, but the optics of what has taken place over the past few weeks. Right?
Yeah.
Guantanamo Bay and the whole nine. And that's supposed to take place, I think, Monday the 24th on the Raging Tomatoes channel. And I have 2 alternates that I'm allowed. And I was thinking about picking you and Jay because y'all are less likely to fuck it up than anybody else I can think of.
I'm in the car, dude.
Okay, bro. The way it's set up is like this. everything's going to be scheduled. I've heard several big names supposedly attached. We're allowing so the Raging Tomato to choose our plus ones, and we're doing 2-on-2. I've heard Andrew Wilson, Rachel Wilson. I've heard a couple of other fairly big names thrown into the mix of maybe like interested in the debate. Not sure if they're going to take that one kind of thing. I don't know. We'll find out. I've got information. We're talking. We're all talking back and forth back here. And hopefully, if I had my brothers, I would love to land like maybe Rachel Wilson or Rachel Wilson. And I don't know. I would kind of accept Jim Bob if he's on my side, right? If we can have us a little conversation and verify that we aren't completely off base on the deportation thing, because
I'll have a
I
little
got no
conversation
shits
with
to give.
anybody.
Sir?
I'll have a little conversation with anybody.
Sure. But what I'm getting at is like I'm a cold-hearted bastard. I do not think you should be here in the first place, but I am willing to caveat a couple of things in order to have a conversation. One, we are not talking about legal migrants at all. This is not this discussion. We are not talking about illegal immigrants, the undocumented, who have come here and not broken the law. That's not the conversation. The conversation is directly around illegal migrants who have come here and continue to break the law. So criminal illegal migrants, which is a bit of an oxymoron, or rather a bit of a double entendre there, but you get what I'm saying.
I do.
So
like I said, in the car.
Right. I'll drop all the information in an email when I have everything in a pile and can like actually set it in front of you.
Good deal.
What's the next one? We got Everest. We did. Oh, we didn't get into Doge.
We're past our end time, dude.
Oh, we are. That was it. My bad. I am slipping up over here. I was having so much fun.
And I'm hungry.
Oh, all right, man. Do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius tonight, and thank you especially tonight for declining to watch some woke sports ball league that hates you, and instead spending your time with something more erudite and edifying. We will see you next week. Do have an outstanding rest of your Sunday evening and next week, and let's go get it. Do not